World War II was not a sudden explosion of violence. It was the result of years of anger, fear, ambition, and failure. To understand how the world fell into its deadliest conflict, we must return to the aftermath of the First World War. In 1918, Europe lay broken. Millions were dead, cities were destroyed, and entire empires had collapsed. Germany, defeated and humiliated, was forced to accept full blame for the war. The Treaty of Versailles stripped the nation of land, military power, and economic stability. Reparations crushed the German economy, and hyperinflation wiped out savings overnight. For ordinary people, hope disappeared. In this chaos, democracy struggled to survive. Many Germans felt betrayed by their leaders and abandoned by the world. Extremist ideas began to grow. Among those voices was Adolf Hitler, a former soldier who promised to restore Germany's pride, rebuild its strength, and punish those he blamed for its suffering. By the early 1930s, Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to power. Using propaganda, fear, and violence, they eliminated political opponents and transformed Germany into a totalitarian state. The Nazi regime rejected the Treaty of Versailles, rebuilt its military, and prepared for expansion. Germany was not alone in its ambitions. In Asia, Japan faced its own problems. Lacking natural resources and driven by militaristic leadership, Japan sought to build an empire. In 1931, Japanese forces invaded Manchuria. By 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China, committing brutal atrocities against civilians. Across Europe, fear of another war haunted governments. Britain and France, exhausted from the First World War, followed a policy of appeasement, hoping that concessions would prevent conflict. But each concession only emboldened aggressors. In 1938, Germany annexed Austria without resistance. Later that year, Hitler demanded the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia. Britain and France agreed, believing they had secured peace. They were wrong. On September 1, 1939, German forces invaded Poland. Tanks crossed borders, aircraft bombed cities, and soldiers advanced with terrifying speed. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war. World War II had begun. Germany's military strategy, known as Blitzkrieg, relied on speed, coordination, and overwhelming force. Poland fell quickly. By 1940, Denmark and Norway were occupied. Belgium and the Netherlands soon followed. Then Germany turned toward France. In a matter of weeks, France collapsed, Paris fell, and the country was divided between German occupation and a puppet government. Europe stood in shock. Only Britain remained standing against Nazi Germany. In the summer of 1940, Germany launched an air campaign against Britain. The Battle of Britain was fought in the skies. Day after day, German bombers targeted airfields, cities, and civilian populations. British pilots, outnumbered and flying fragile aircraft, fought relentlessly. Their victory prevented invasion and marked Germany's first major defeat. Meanwhile, Italy, led by Benito Mussolini, joined the Axis powers alongside Germany and Japan. Italian campaigns in North Africa and the Mediterranean expanded the war further. In 1941, Hitler made a catastrophic decision. He turned east and launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. It was the largest military operation in history. Millions of soldiers clashed across vast distances. Early German advances were devastating, but the Soviet Union did not collapse. As winter arrived, German forces were unprepared. Soviet resistance hardened. The war on the Eastern Front became a brutal struggle of survival, marked by extreme cold, starvation, and unimaginable casualties. That same year, in the Pacific, Japan made its own decisive move. On December 7, 1941, Japanese aircraft attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. Battleships burned, sailors died, and the United States was thrust into the war. With America's entry, World War II became truly global. Industrial power shifted. The Allies, Britain, the Soviet Union, and the United States, began coordinating their efforts against the Axis powers. In 1942, the war reached its turning point. In the Pacific, the Battle of Midway destroyed Japan's naval strength. In North Africa, Allied forces pushed back Axis armies. On the Eastern Front, the Battle of Stalingrad became one of the bloodiest confrontations in history. Stalingrad was not just a battle, it was a symbol. Street by street, building by building, soldiers fought in ruins. Entire armies were destroyed. When German forces surrendered in early 1943, the myth of Nazi invincibility shattered. As the Allies gained momentum, the true horror of Nazi ideology became impossible to ignore. Across occupied Europe, millions of Jews, Romani people, disabled individuals, and political prisoners were rounded up. They were transported to concentration and extermination camps. The Holocaust was systematic, industrialized murder. Families were torn apart. Entire communities were erased. 6 million Jews were murdered, along with millions of other innocent victims. This genocide remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. In 1943 and 1944, Allied bombing campaigns intensified. German cities were reduced to rubble. Meanwhile, Allied troops advanced through Italy, forcing Mussolini from power. The most critical moment came on June 6, 1944. Known as D-Day, Allied forces launched the largest amphibious invasion ever attempted. Thousands of ships crossed the English Channel. Soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy under heavy fire. The landings were brutal, but they succeeded. France was liberated, and Allied forces pushed toward Germany from the west. At the same time, Soviet armies advanced relentlessly from the east. By 1945, Germany was collapsing. Cities lay in ruins. Civilian suffering was immense. Hitler, isolated and delusional, retreated into his bunker beneath Berlin. In April 1945, Soviet troops entered Berlin. Street fighting consumed the city. Realizing defeat was inevitable, Hitler took his own life. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered. Victory in Europe was declared, but the war was not yet over. In the Pacific, fighting continued with ferocity. American forces advanced island by island, facing fierce Japanese resistance. Battles at Iwo Jima and Okinawa demonstrated how costly an invasion of Japan would be. In August 1945, the United States made a decision that would change history forever. Atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Entire cities were destroyed in seconds. Tens of thousands died instantly, with many more suffering long-term effects. On September 2, 1945, Japan surrendered. World War II was finally over. The cost was staggering. More than 70 million people were dead. Entire nations were devastated. Europe lay in ruins. Asia was scarred by occupation and war. Yet from the destruction came change. The United Nations was formed in hopes of preventing future conflicts. War crimes trials held leaders accountable for atrocities. Colonial empires began to collapse, giving rise to new nations. The world emerged divided between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, setting the stage for the Cold War. World War II reshaped humanity. It revealed both the depths of cruelty and the heights of courage. Ordinary people endured extraordinary suffering. Soldiers fought and died far from home. Civilians survived bombings, famine, and occupation. The lessons of World War II are not just history, they are warnings. When hatred is allowed to grow, when power goes unchecked, and when silence replaces action, the consequences can be catastrophic. This war must never be forgotten, not for its battles, but for its human cost. Because remembering World War II is not about the past, it is about protecting the future.